Hey, hi, hello besties, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. For those of you who are new here, I like to psychoanalyze my favorite fictional characters in a very normal way. I also occasionally post speed paints on here. I would highly recommend following my art account on Instagram. It's at @tushnado_artiste. I've been a huge fan of Hazbin Hotel and Helluva for a while now. When I heard there was a new episode coming out that was Fizz-centric, I just about lost my marbles. I mean, who doesn't like him? He's voiced by Alex Brightman. He's a goober. He's a jester. We also got more Fizz and Ozzy. Big W, they are the couple ever.
Fizzy!
But by far the most insane thing to happen in this episode is the fact that Blitz and Fizz make up. Yes, you heard me. It happened. Seriously, this is peak Helluva. If you haven't seen this episode yet, why are you even watching this video, A? But B, go watch it! In this video, I'm going to be taking a closer look at Fizz and Blitz's relationship, and taking a psychological look into how they split up and how they got back together. Just quickly throwing in my disclaimer before we begin the video, I would like to say that I'm in no way a licensed professional. I do a lot of my research online, and I will always put my sources at the end of my videos. Most of my analyses go around mental health discussions and very often look into past traumas. Even for Helluva, I will say that this episode delved into some really deep, dark stuff. I'm talking Blitz's past trauma, Fizz's past trauma. It was really intense, and there are a lot of scenes that are really unsettling. I am going to be discussing what happens in those scenes, and it does involve fire, explosions, unaliving, stuff like that. So if you can't handle that, I would highly suggest clicking off this video and finding a different one to watch. Just so you know how this video is kind of going to play out. First thing we're going to look into is background knowledge, so Blitz and Fizz's past, what happened, and then we're going to move on to a psychological analysis where we'll look into assumption, how trauma affects the brain, that sort of a thing. So from practically the beginning, we get the idea that Blitz and Fizz were childhood best friends at the circus, or at least hinted at having an incredibly close relationship throughout their lives. We were first teased with this idea via images on Blitz's phone on Season 1, Episode 7. Clips from Season 2, Episode 1 practically confirmed this. In this episode, we also come to find out that Fizz is very good at the stage, while Blitz not so much. And that brings us up to Season 2, Episode 6. And holy guacamole! Season 2, Episode 1 introduces us to Buckzo, Blitz's waste of air dad. This man sucks.
Ricky, when I catch you, Ricky? Ricky, when I catch you, Ricky?
He's shown not really loving his son and more just using him as a tool and manipulating him. Episode 6 revealed that Buckzo favoritized Fizz, literally handing him a card that says, "Wish you were my son." And this is why context is so important, because already, as kids, we're seeing some tension between the two of them. Despite them very much caring about each other and being best friends, there's already some solidifying tension that only gets worse as they age. Also, Blitz might have had a crush on Fizz. I mean, we caught this man in 4K with a card that says Fizz's eyes only, with a heart sticker and a flower. If that doesn't scream romance, I don't know what does. All this being said, that part of things is just speculation, hasn't been confirmed yet. Episode 6 reveals to us why things went sour and how exactly that came about. Blitz accidentally started a fire in the Big Top on Fizz's birthday. It spreads quickly, and Fizz, trying to escape, has a rather unfortunate encounter with fireworks. It's also heavily implied, practically confirmed, that Blitz's mother Tilla dies in this fire. And it's finally revealed what happened exactly that made these guys hate each other so much. And you know what it is? Miscommunication.
What do you mean by shaking out? What are you doing? What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean?
Blitz tries to visit Fizz in recovery, but is told that Fizz doesn't want to see him. On the other hand, Fizz is told that Blitz never tried to visit him. Blitz and Fizz both took the Big Top workers' word for it and never communicated with each other and completely cut each other off for 15 years. And due to this lack of communication, they both took their own interpretations from what happened during this really traumatic event, which, you know what, valid, lots of trauma there, can get behind that. and accepted that as the truth. And of course, that drove a wedge between them. Now, one thought that comes to mind is, they were friends for so long, how did they let an assumption get in the way? It's very psychological, actually. I'm going to be breaking down some basic psychology stuff, and I guess that can be boring, so while I do so, allow yourself to be enthralled by these grotesque images of cookies. Now, in theory, we have two systems that the brain uses to make decisions. One system is conscious, while the other is unconscious. To do something unconsciously means to do it involuntarily. So for instance, like blinking, you do that without thinking, it's an instinct. Now, what I mean by conscious, it would be the opposite. So like willing yourself to get up and go to school in the morning. Nobody wants to do that, but we know we have to, so we will ourselves to do it. Doesn't happen automatically. Now, the one system I really want to focus on is the unconscious decision-making system, because that's the one that we use the most. And to really hit it home, I guess, and help you understand, I'm gonna show you an example of what I mean. To put this theory into practice, here's this image of Blitz and Fizz again. Now let's say we're looking at this with fresh eyes, and we don't know who Blitz and Fizz are. We can deduce, simply from this photo, that they're very close friends. Why? Because they're hugging each other, they seem very happy, they're doing a very similar pose, and based off of what we've already experienced with friends or depictions of best friends, that's typical behavior, right? See, what we just did there was we came to an assumption. Now, going back onto this picture again, when this picture was released and shown, people assumed that Blitz and Fizz might be brothers simply because of their matching markings on their foreheads. However, this wasn't the case, this was debunked. Because of the unconscious and immediate nature of this assumption making, and because it's a very logical connection, for the most part, it's very difficult for your brain to comprehend the fact that when you're making these unconscious assumptions and analyses, you could be wrong. Applying this to Blitz and Fizz and what happened, it makes sense that they made these assumptions, because they both saw what happened to each other through childhood. They saw Blitz being mistreated by Buxo, they saw Blitz being ridiculed by the Big Top for his lack of skill, and Fizz being praised for his, and they saw Buxo favoritizing Fizz. And from what happened and what they experienced on separate measures, they took these assumptions about each other, logical assumptions, and they ran with them. It took 15 years because they were sure they were right. And when there is so much trauma involved, it makes it that much harder to consciously decide to remove yourself from the situation and analyze it. Which brings me to the next reason they assumed the worst. They were both mentally affected by a traumatic event. During a traumatic event, it's incredibly common and normal for victims to experience gaps in their memories of the event. It's entirely possible that Fizz may only remember specific things, like the smell of the smoke, for instance, or Blitz running away. And because of possible gaps in his memory, Fizz may have relied on the Big Top workers to explain things to him. Now, as for Blitz, what I think we have evidence for, and what I think he went through from a mental standpoint while experiencing his trauma, was something called fear circuitry. During traumatic events where there's a lot of fear, a lot of energy, a lot of just panic in general, the prefrontal cortex sometimes pieces out. Instinct takes over, and that makes decision making a lot harder. Blitz may have run away simply because his instinct took over. He had no way, from a physical, mental standpoint, to decide what to do or how to help. And on top of this, there's also the problem of his mother Tilla during the fire. What I think really shows in the episode that Blitz was dealing with fear circuitry during this traumatic event was how he describes trying to get help for Fizz.
Okay, you're right. It was all my fault, okay? I should have done more to help. I was trying. There was so much going on. I was trying to get help, Fizz. It was still my fault.
One last point I want to make is that trauma itself ingrains very intensely in your brain. Just due to the amount of chemicals like adrenaline moving through your system, Your brain essentially takes any pieces of what you went through and stores them where emotions are processed. And this means that it's much more difficult to reason with something traumatic using logic or even to try a new perspective on it. Your memories of the event are so sensitive. I think that's what makes this scene so profound, is the fact that despite the terrifying and terrible experiences they had, despite the logistics of what they both deduced from their trauma, they overcame that to make up and reconcile. Fizz had every right to be mad at Blitz for running from him and leaving him there, and he had every right to believe what he did about Blitz considering what he had been told. But not only does he listen to Blitz's side of things, he accepts his apology, which is so profound. And Blitz apologizes despite the very valid reasons he had for running away and the panic in the incident. He still understands that he's hurt Fizz, and despite his own traumas, he apologizes, which is also very huge in his development as a character. Anyways, thank you so much for sticking around to the end of the video. If you liked what you saw, please like, subscribe, or consider it anyway. By all means, leave essays in the comments. Please give me your thoughts and opinions. I want to hear them all. No back to school's just here, so wish you guys the best in your studies. I'm a university student now, which is crazy to think about. Love you guys. Stay safe. Okay, bye-bye.